Hello, welcome to Masterpiece Home Theater. I'm your host, Digital Don Avey, and tonight we will be discussing building a reference theater on any budget, even the poor's. Ha 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 ha. What's up, party people? Thank you for joining us. The most valuable gift you have is your time, and I certainly appreciate you guys coming on. Tonight, we have a pretty cool subject, how to build a reference theater on any budget. I have my very good friend, Theo, which you guys know from Audioholics, and my good friend, Kenny from RBH, who's going to kind of end this with some different packages for money reference point. And of course, there's many, many fantastic brands of speakers, but we got Kenny tonight. In the upcoming months, we're going to have some amazing subjects. We're going to have some industry professionals, both manufacturers and professional theater designers. We're also going to have some of your favorite and most knowledgeable influencers. Shane Lee, Giles McCoy is going to be on. I'm going to have Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner, good friend of mine, super cool dude, super knowledgeable, Jay Ayagi, and a few more. So thank you very much for joining us. And tonight, we're going to start off talking about this subject. And Theo, what do you think is the first thing somebody says, hey, I got a few dollars, really want this home theater thing. What's the first thing that you think somebody needs to look at?
For me, and I'll tell you my approach is two-channel, because I think anytime you're looking at home theater, you always need to look at two-channel first. Because that, to me, in my experience over 20 some odd years, is what builds the biggest bang for the buck. And what I found in talking with folks is sometimes when they look at an entire system, they tend to dilute what the opportunity is for the stereo bang for the buck. So to me, that's the anchor. And that's where I always start my discussion. I don't know what your experience is, Don, but that's where I do.
Well, that's a good question. So I would say probably the first thing to look at is the room that it's going to go into. The overwhelming majority of people are fans, people that are into the hobby with us, which is a lot of people. It's probably the room. And most people have open rooms, family rooms, great rooms. Not everybody has the luxury of a dedicated space specifically for that. Or sometimes that space might be open to a back, might have three walls in the front. So I always try to really take a comprehensive look at the room where it's going to go and calculate the volume of the room and really find out the needs of the person. What are they looking for in general? Are they looking to have just a dedicated movie watching space, which is totally cool? Or do they want to have a system like many of us do that doubles as both an audiophile two-channel system as well as a full tilt, knock your socks off home theater?
Agreed. And I think that the approach is different depending on which way you're going to go. That's the other thing. So I've done both the lifestyle, we'll call it the lifestyle theater, which is a media room, the family room. And I've also done the dedicated home theater route. And I think both of them require a little bit of a different approach. The lifestyle of the living room has to really be multi-purpose in how it's approached. So I think that how you design the theater tends to be a little different in that regard.
100%. So if you're designing a dedicated theater space, you might have different needs. The principles are the same, and that's what we're going to discuss today. So one of the things I know sounds like clickbait, but really a reference home theater. What is a reference home theater? Does that mean you need to have $250,000 worth of the top gear, top acoustic treatments and whatnot? I don't think so. I think a reference home theater, even on a lower budget, would be a theater where the speakers are correct for the room. The positioning of the speakers is correct, which is uber critical, as we all know very well. And all the principles that would apply to a big full tilt room, the acoustics of the room, trying to do things that you can to achieve that reference kind of sound, meaning everything's calibrated, everything fits the room, you've got the dynamics, you've got the clear sound. What do you think, Kenny? What would you say if somebody was just getting into it and wanted to design a theater but didn't have a monster budget?
Absolutely. Yeah, the main thing is just like, how big is your room? Is it a humongous room? Is it a small room? And really get the speaker for your room. And the main thing that you really want is to have enough dynamics from your speaker to be able to have an acceptable theater experience. THX standard at the seating position, having peak outputs of 105 dB and sustained output at 85 dB. As long as you got a speaker package that can meet those minimum requirements, you'll have a stellar experience.
Absolutely. And there's literally a ton of fantastic speakers. We're almost in a renaissance. I mean, there are speakers now under $1,000 that I would own that sound phenomenal. I mean, one that comes to mind is Elax, series. And there's many others that go into that. You hit on a good point. So if you're going to design a reference system for surround and even music to an extent, really the subwoofers are going to be the foundation. So Theo had just spent a long time. Now, he spent many years on his journey, but decided to build this reference theater. So we're going to kind of go through that a little bit, let him explain it. Then we'll talk about how you can take those same principles and trickle that down to fit. Theo's rich. So he just goes on a yacht and, just whatever, man, eats caviar. But for most people, what are the options and what's going to be good for you? So Theo, why don't you dive in a little bit on your journey and how you did this?
Sure. So I think I want to just convey to everybody, I've been doing the theater concept for probably 20 years. And it's nothing that, I mean, Don's being tongue in cheek. I couldn't afford to do it in one fell swoop. And for me, I had to think about an iterative way to do it. So I started with a theater in my living room in a lifestyle space. And then here in the Northeast with a basement, I said, okay, I have an unfinished basement. Is there an area that I could eventually carve out, and what would that look like? So the way that I approached it, which was a little different, is I had the luxury of having various freestand speakers come in for review. So I would actually model those out based on best practices and principles. And so my original vision and design was to have freestanding speakers. And then maybe right before COVID, so we'd be talking about 2019, started the wall build out in the room. And again, I had modeled that based on whatever it was. And based on the principles, I decided I did not need something that was fully soundproof, but I did want some solid walls and some resiliency. So started with standard 2x4s. And Don, as you know, you were pretty invaluable in some of that consultation, as well as Matt Pose. So I did 2x4 with sheetrock type X and then put rock wool insulation in the walls. And when I started to do that, I realized that I didn't want freestanding speakers to take up the space. And that's when I ultimately decided that I wanted to do architectural speakers. And with the different options and experiences that I had with reviews, I had settled ultimately at that time on the Focal 1000 series. So I'd already had the 300 series in for review, and I was pretty satisfied with the price performance value, and got some of the 1000 series in and really liked what I heard. And that's what I decided ultimately to architect my theater around, if you will. And then once I had the room dimensions, Don, to your original point, and Kenny, is I reached out to Vicoustic. And then what I did is I had Vicoustic model the room and provide a solution for me on what the acoustic treatment would look like, because I wanted to have a good RT60. I wanted to try to control some of the modes in the room. And what worked for me is to be able, it's $150, whatever that upfront fee is, but they modeled the room. I got a 3D modeling back, and then I had all the products recommended with an entire measurement projections as to what the room would sound like. So that's the way I approached it.
No, that's phenomenal. So you had some luxuries of consulting with some companies and whatnot.
Yeah.
Most people don't have the budget or the ability to do that. So there's things I know Gene did a live stream with Benchmark a few weeks ago, which I enjoyed, and they had a list of importance of things, and number one on that list was the room.
Yeah.
People don't understand how important the room is. Now, again, it doesn't have to be a dedicated room, and we're talking about mechanically, acoustically treating the room at certain things. A lot of times, somebody commented earlier, it's lifestyle, family. What is it going to be used for? It's hard to put acoustic treatments into a great room. I know that very well, finding the right spots to do that. By identifying the room, the next step was speakers in the list of importance, which I agree with 100%. Then it was amplification. The next step down was, preamp, pre-pro, source, and at the bottom was cables and interconnects. And I thought that was a really good, kind of a good cheat sheet on what you're trying to do to design a theater that goes into it. Now, as a consumer with YouTube and forums and the internet, there's a lot of really good videos and information on how you can do your own acoustic treatments, whether you purchase them and hang them, or if you want to build them yourself. I mean, it's certainly not rocket surgery to do that, but there's a whole wealth of information. So basically, Theo had this space in his basement, and he had the big RBH SVTRs like I have, these monster speakers.
Great.
And he got them in there and realized, man, it's eating up too much space in the room. And that's why you decided to go with the in-wall architectural speaker option, which I'm telling you, no matter how many wives' tales you hear, there are architectural speakers now, many of them, that perform similar and on par with box speakers. They just do. I install them every day, install them in tons of rooms, not all of them, but a lot of them. And they really do solve a lot of problems. You have architectural, you have on wall, and of course you have your LCRs, bookshelves, and your tower speakers to do that. I know you had a little apprehension for a minute, Theo, about doing the in wall, but how did it turn out?
I am so happy that I did it. I have to tell you, for me, my daily stereo system was Revel Ultima 2 Salons. So those were my reference pair, and I wanted something that could at least emulate where I could come into the theater, because 2-channel music's really important to me, and I didn't want to give that up. Yes, I want the dynamics of what I get in a home theater, but to my ears, I don't really like horns, and I don't tend towards compression drivers. So once I had the Focal Scala Utopias in for review, that was just magic for me. So that sealed the deal, and that's the way I decided to do that. And if you read the review, it's on the Audioholics homepage right now. And even if you come in and sit in the theater, you're going to be darn blown away by how great the 1000 Utopias sound. Imaging is amazing. It is just like a freestanding 2-channel system. The image and sound stage that they throw is huge. It's lifelike. It's just like freestanding speakers. The biggest drawback, if I had to say any, is probably the depth of soundstage, where I notice just not as deep as what I get with the Salon 2s. But I get all of the other elements that I love about standalone 2-channel system. And then once you go multi-channel, you just forget it all, because that takes over and you just get lost in the space.
And that's very cool. I mean, the Utopia is certainly a flagship speaker, a very expensive speaker, but using Focal as example, because that's what you use in your system, Focal makes that 300 series killer speaker and would satisfy almost anybody. They even make a 100 series, which is even less expensive, which still gives you that kind of signature sound. I think for most people that are starting out, again, depending on your budget, if your budget's not high, looking at a speaker, something maybe with a horn or a compression driver, that's going to give you more output. It's going to give you more detail, and it's going to be more efficient. Power sound, Klipsch is a great choice. You get a lot of bang for your buck, a lot of output on it. And if it's going to be for a dedicated theater, I think those speakers are perfectly fine. In fact, a lot of times when we're doing reference high dollar systems, we're going to use like an RBH with a big ribbon tweeter, or a JTR, or a JBL Synthesis, or a Sendo, or one of the more compression driven, high dynamic, high output speakers to put in there, because we have a lot of volume to cover. Again, you can use those same principles and kind of shrink that down into your room. And of course, your budget to do that. I think that would be a smart choice. What about subwoofers in your room, Theo?
So for subs, what I ended up doing is I've always been a big RBH fan. So that goes without saying. I love the SVTR. The SVTRs, I had them in this room for years and years, and the bass output was just astounding. And what I decided to do in this room was to anchor the entire room with, you'll see there's two of these. These are the new 1212 SWs. And then this is the granddaddy. This is the RBH Unrivaled, the 21-inch sub. Forget my fingerprints that are on it. And this will play down to 6 hertz flat in my room. So I have this handling the infrasonics, and then I have the on-wall 1212 SWs that are handling all the frequencies up to about 120 hertz or so. And what I found that works really well with this setup is I only have to worry about one footprint. And that one footprint is the 21-inch. And I have it on the left side of the room. So I was fortunate enough to have Shane Rich, RBH's technical director, come out because this was part of the review setup. And then we put the 1212 SWs up on the wall. And what I'm really impressed with the setup is the 1212, the Unrivaled 21-inch just speaks for itself. It's a reference sub in every way, shape, and form. There's no other way to describe it. And it just has changed the entire game of my theater, everybody who's come into it. The 1212 SWs, I think, are the real secret weapon in RBH's lineup. The fact that you have a 5-inch depth and you can hang these on the wall horizontally, vertically, you name it. You can put them underneath a couch, and you don't have to break the wall. That's the whole thing. The fact that they're on-wall subs really has been a game changer for me, because even with the all-architectural setup, the thought of having more subs and taking up more footprint in the room isn't super appealing, because when you build a theater, you unknowingly love the aesthetics of the room, right? Mm-hmm. And when you have too much stuff in the room, it doesn't do it for you. So this was an ideal solution, and Kenny will tell us you can color match these things. You can send them a color swatch, so you can literally make them disappear in your room. So that's what I did as a foundation, and complement that with Dirac art. If you've seen the measurements, this thing is just flat. I have a completely flat response from 150 hertz all the way down to 20 hertz.
Which is what you liked and what you wanted to achieve. You know, plus you got like 57 subwoofers in that room. If you think about it, you got all those Focal subs in the bottom going across. I mean, you just did that to show off. Come on, man.
Great.
To do that. So, you know, when, again, not everybody can do 21-inch and dual 12s and whatnot, but if you're going into a more of a budget situation, we always recommend that you have at least 2 subwoofers. And I know many of these people are educated on, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but certainly you want to try to take advantage of multi-sub. 2 subs to me is a minimum. Try to place them in different locations. The world, again, is your oyster. You have RSL. Of course, SVS makes killer subs. I mean, just killer subs. Stark, man, I'm going to leave people out. You know, Sue. I mean, there are so many really good, affordable subwoofers now that, you know, you can have 2, 3, 4. I know things changed for my system when I added 4 subs versus always just having 2. 2 is great. FOMO better. You know what I mean? So you set all this up. What did you use for power and electronics in this, Theo?
So great question. I was hesitant and I really didn't know what to do. So I had a Denon 8500 HA here in the room, which if anyone is looking at a Denon wants an all-in-one AVR, the Denon A1H, that whole line is just spectacular. I can't say enough good things. When I was talking with the Focal folks, they really wanted me to look at putting the Focal Astral 16 in here. And there's a method to the madness. The Astral 16 is based on the Storm audio platform, and it has incredible flexibility. So it's a 16-channel processor. It has 12 channels of onboard amplification. They're Pascal modules. So these things will put out almost 300 watts into 4 ohms with all channels driven, give or take. So it's a real beast of an amplifier. But what it allows me to do is it allows me to run direct art. I can do PEQ. I can do active crossovers, and I can run LFE to the mains. And that was the big thing. Is Focal's selling point is that with the submodules, you can run LFE signals to the mains to really balance out bass throughout the space. So I took them at their word, and I took a chance on the Astral 16. And I have to tell you, I'm glad that I did that. It was an investment, to say the least, but it was certainly the right move.
Yeah, and that's a pretty expensive piece. Obviously, it's got Storm audio technology built into it, Pascal modules. I would say most people only need a good AV receiver, and it doesn't have to be a flagship receiver. There are so many phenomenal receivers out there right now. We were just talking about that before we went live on here. I mean, Denon, Marantz, the new Onkyo stuff is absolutely killer. And, you know, their other line, Integra, is really, really good. The new Sony ES lines are great. I would say get something of quality, usually something over $1,000. You can do it a little less. You're getting a different chassis, different power supply, just a different level product usually when you go under $1,000. Not bad, but I mean, they're just not going to be at the same level. I would say get a receiver in the $1,000 to $2,000 range. Should power about anything you want to do until you're ready to make a major step up. And the receivers now have, I mean, like some of the Denons, Marantzes have Odyssey, Dirac. You've got Anthem if you want to step up, you know, with art on that. I mean, there's a lot of technology now and capability built into these receivers, including multiple sub output, so that you can now dial in your subwoofers to do that. If you're going to do a system based on surround, I think most people are going to be okay with a really good set of bookshelves or an LCR type speaker, crossing those over anywhere from 80 hertz to 100 up to 120 if the subwoofer is of good quality. I prefer sealed. You get more sound output for the dollar if you use ported. And I think for a home theater application, that would be fine. Really, it's going to boil down to positioning of the speakers. And we're going to do probably a whole stream just on the mechanical setup of the room with the acoustic treatments, the positioning of the speakers, because it does an inch in some things, an inch matters. And one of them is speakers, you know, tuning your speaker, towing them in. There's an old audiophile practice that we have. I did a little bit with Michael, you know, youth band a while back, and we're going to dive a little more into that. That's super, super important. Super important. So
John, can I make a comment about
course.
the AVRs and what have you? I back in the day, you know, you're basically looking at channel count and power. And I think that AVRs have evolved today that it's really worth looking at the ecosystem that the AVRs plug into. So, you know, are you an iPhone guy? You know, do you care about AirPlay? Do you want Chromecast? So I think looking at the broader ecosystem in your home is now really a decision factor when you're looking at AVRs. The one thing that I've really noticed over the years, and again, I've had a lot of Denons more recently over the past couple of years in for review, is how good the preamp stage has gotten in these newer models. That was not necessarily the case in years past. So that to me is a big factor is, yes, look at channel count, but also look at the streaming ecosystem that you're trying to fit this into, because that's going to make the usability so much more valuable for the end user.
Yeah, I got to give Gene a few props on that. I know when he was doing reviews, and he's got really great relationships with a lot of manufacturers, he would always measure the pre-outs, and he really pushed for them to add better pre-outs. And pre-outs give you the world's your oyster, because you can have a really nice AV receiver as long as it's got pre-outs on all your channels. You can certainly upgrade. Now, there's been a lot of talk about adding an amplifier. If you have a receiver, say it rates about 130 watts a channel, and then you go out and you buy a more affordable amp at 150, 175, you get it home, you hook it up to your speakers, you're like, man, I got separates now, and you play it and you're like, I don't really hear a difference. That's a common theme. So it's not necessary that you add outboard amplifiers unless you're ready to make the step to go into big power. And I'm not going to get into the semantics and all the, numbers on that, but you have to go big to really hear a demonstrable difference in your sound. Just the other day, I was at a guy's house and he had what I would call a more budget oriented theater. He had Klipsch reference towers. I'm not sure the exact model. Klipsch center, Klipsch end ceilings for Atmos and sides and rears, and a couple SVS 3000 subs, the ported ones. Man, that thing sounded killer. Played loud. It was clean. He put a lot of time into setting it up and calibrating it and whatnot. He had an 85-inch TV like I have, which, is not the biggest, but it really fit his room. I was blown away with the sound that was able to produce. And that was kind of spawned this whole stream, because I was like, I could live with that. Now, that being said, we're a little bit spoiled and we're uber nerds on it, but he was perfectly happy with it. And, he had me come over. He's like, man, can you give me some tips to improve it? We talked about adding some heavy curtains and maybe a couple acoustical treatments in there, but I mean, it sounded great. The calibration was really good. It was dynamic. It was clear. It was okay on 2-channel music. I mean, that's not my flavor, but I mean, it sounded good. It really, electronic music, rock, it was really, really good. Guys through the moon happy, and I'm happy for him. And really, it got me thinking about, we get a little bit big for our britches because we get to review and be around audio shows and all this high-end equipment. We get it in our homes. We're spoiled. But sometimes the difference is razor thin. Sometimes it's night and day. Sometimes you can spend a whole lot more money. It's the diminishing returns. Once you reach a certain point in quality, any improvement in quality, however incremental that might be, is going to cost you exponentially more. And then it comes into like aesthetics, looks, pride of ownership. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it.
And maybe we should talk a little bit about how to do that acquisition strategy. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can buy gear over time. So for example, I mean, my Salon 2s, I've now had them, I don't know how long. I bought them used, and I had a great relationship with our local hi-fi dealer, Take 5 down here. And you know what? A pair came in that were used. The owner knew the family very, very well. And I had a great relationship. I said, is it okay if I bring them to the house? And they were at a ridiculously discounted price. And he let me have them for a couple of days. I put a deposit down on them, and that was it. So I think if those of you in the audience, you have a dealer near you, that's probably the first thing that I would recommend. And if you aspire to get a certain model, whether it's speakers or an AVR, when those models change over, they're going to sell their demo units. You can sometimes get a 50% discount on really great gear if you know how to buy it in that regard. Obviously, online dealers that sell direct, you're going to get a good value there as well. And, since I've got a lot of experience with RBH and Kenny is here as well, you have another whole angle where you have the ability to have an entire product line from a US manufacturer. So if that's important to you, you can do that with an RBH, and you get just value bang for the buck. And the other thing that I like with RBH, which I don't know how many enthusiasts know, they will actually build speakers to your spec. So if you have a room, you've got specific challenges, you don't find something that's out there, that's what RBH does for bread and butter. So you can contact RBH and they will custom design a speaker to fit for your room according to your performance spec. So there's so many different options that you can choose from.
No, that's a good point. And certainly, can get up in price range when you do that. But I think RBH and many of their lines will custom make speakers to fit your particular need, which is really great. Another thing that people don't talk about in setting up your theater is presentation, right? What do you want to look at? Because you're going to have to sit there and look at it. You're going to have a screen, acoustically transparent screen where everything's hidden. Do you want to see your equipment? A lot of people like to look at their speakers. They like to see those copper drivers shining. It just looks kind of mean. Looks serious business when you walk in and do it. And it's super cool. But what is your equipment going to live in? Are the electronics going to be located in the room? And if so, how much heat are they going to produce? What's the temperature of that room? I know when we're designing big, high-end, high-dollar theaters, we start with the infrastructure, the construction of the room, construction of the floor. We start with the HVAC, having enough. We like to use linear diffusers that are treated inside, that have sound deadening built into them, because nothing's worse than you're watching a quiet place and the air goes and kicks on. I mean, it's just not cool. But that's a thing that nobody thinks about when they're designing a room. How much heat is that equipment? If it's a class A, B, like a receiver, you cook an egg on a lot of those. And putting a fan on top of it might cool it at the source, but that's not going to keep that out of your room. What kind of cabinetry are you going to have? You're going to have a cabinet to the side. You're going to have like a salamander or a BDI, some kind of nice cabinet, IKEA, that's going to be located to the TV. So those are factors too that you need to kind of work in your budget. Where is the equipment going to live? Because as an integrator professionally, we put a lot of effort into the equipment having the best home that it can, for lack of a better term. You know, is there airflow around the equipment? Is it shoved in? Is a center channel shoved into a cabinet, which isn't ideal? These are all factors that you should consider. Again, at any budget. I mean, you could go to Salvation Army and buy a used cabinet. I've done it many times, which is really cool. Now, going to the acquisition and upgrade process, you know, you've got direct to consumer, many companies now that are offering really fantastic deals. I think, you know, Arendal, SVS, I mean, Emotiva, and there's several more. I think Buckeye's direct to consumers now. So you're starting to see a lot of options there. Facebook Marketplace, I see speakers all the time, pictures of them, many of them look good. And again, like Audiogon is a great source. You can usually buy, say, a $10,000 pair of speakers, many times for $5,000 or $6,000 that have a couple years on them. For the most part, most people tend to take care of expensive audio equipment. There's always the one with the pushed in tweeter or the scratches on the cabinet, but that's a good way to continually upgrade and acquire. Now, going to acoustic treatments, I want Theo to talk a little bit about the treatments in his room. Then I've got some ideas that might fit a more normal budget, so to speak.
And before I do that, let me comment on one thing. You mentioned the HVAC, just to go there for a second. I compromised on that with budget. And I'll tell you, I don't know if I told you what I did. If you can see that here, that's what I did.
Split.
I did a split system.
Yeah, works great.
So it's quiet. It's got a low noise floor. And, you know, you think about it here in the Northeast, I needed something that was going to be a combination for both cooling and heat in the room. So it does the job. So there's different options of what you can do in that regard. So what was where did you want me to go?
No, your acoustic treatments, man. What you did and those same principles, how they can be applied.
So maybe you want to play the quick slide that has some of the room, the acoustic slide. So this was the design. Vicoustic has so many different options for acoustic panels and acoustic treatment. And my whole thing was I needed something that could really fit within a reasonable budget. So there are so many folks that do some amazing things artistically, but I did the side panels, and this is the diffuser on the back wall, which you can see behind me here.
That's expensive.
Yeah. So there's different options. So here's what we did: is the side panels were a combination of the absorber diffusers, and my ceiling is low, and that's why my ceiling is just about 7 feet. So it's underneath a sunken part of the house. And that's why getting the acoustic modeling was so important for me, because it really helped to identify the products, the placement of the products. That was part of it. And then the whole design. So this is the back wall of the theater. So I have the diffuser panel here, and I did it in stages. I did this over a 2-year period. So I did the front right and the front of the theater in the first stage. And then just this past year, we did the left side and the diffuser panel in the left. So again, it's not something you have to do all in one fell swoop, but the difference is amazing with the acoustic treatment, the noise floor of the room. And in particular, after I did the ceiling panels, the sense of ambience and space and overhead was night and day. That was actually the most noticeable difference in the room, was that right there.
100%. One of the things that we have in the business is that you can take a mediocre system, put it into a great room and get great sound. You could take a killer system, put it in a bad room and get bad sound. And that's very, very true. But however, you don't have to buy, a high level, high end custom design system like you have with the Acoustics. It's always great if you can. But if you go on Amazon, there's a ton of really good panels of all shapes and sizes, absorbive, diffusive, or the combination panels like you have with the veneer front on them with the slots in them. They're kind of a hybrid between the two. You want to try to get, depending on what you're looking for, if you're trying to design a high-end 2-channel system, your acoustic treatments are usually going to be a little different than if you're trying to design mainly a surround sound system, meaning that first reflection point, that first bounce that you get from your left and right speakers on a high-end 2-channel system or music-oriented system, many times you want to have that, you want to leave that untreated. So the speakers are designed to do that. The speakers work better to do that. I know that Aaron, when he's doing his measurements, and he talks about a lot of speakers that might work out better for that. Then there's some speakers that benefit from having those absorbive panels at that first reflection point. And there's a few ways to do that. Certainly you can buy acoustic panels, or say if you have a room that's open on one side, you have a wall here, you might want to absorb that because that's not reflecting on your right speaker, but your left speaker is getting that bounce immediately off of it. Little things that I've learned over the years. You can go on, again, Amazon and buy heavy sound dampening curtains. Now, those aren't absorbive, but those sound dampening curtains, say that 3 times, will actually give you kind of some diffusion on that and a little bit of sound dampening on it, a little bit of absorption that goes into it. And you can get these curtains many times for under $100. It doesn't mean they have to go over a window. You can take curtains and put them and use them in a room that looks actually really, really good. Maybe with some LED lights and whatnot that go with them. There's a lot of things that you can do if you just do a little homework on it, even on a budget. I mean, I've seen people with, $3,500 budgets buy something here, buy something there, and create pretty damn good systems that sound amazing on that. So Kenny, at the RBH headquarters, do you have all your rooms acoustically treated?
No. In fact, our theater room is treated, but we have our living room, which is more like what you would expect in a normal living situation, where we have a sofa and some furniture that gives people a really good idea of what they can expect in a normal, untreated room. And people are still blown away by what they hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Really establishing, looking at the room, to kind of go back and reiterate a little bit. What do I have to work with? And what do I want to achieve? Do I want a multi-purpose system? As an integrator, we did theaters in almost every large home for many, many years. Theaters kind of went out of vogue for a multitude of reasons. They were usually located in a different part of the house. They were what's called a destination location. And as human beings, we're pretty simple. Like most people live in their kitchen, family room, and in Florida, an open lanai that goes out. So I want to do a system in here because this is where I watch movies and I watch TV. All right. So what's next? What do we have? We have a fireplace. We have just a blank wall. Do we have 2 walls that come out the side? Is it open the back to a kitchen? But you got options, man. You got so many options to do that. You can do architectural speakers in your ceiling. You can do on ceiling speakers that angle down and fire at you. Now the wiring of the room, that's where it gets in a little tricky. There's a lot of do-it-yourself people that don't mind cutting a little bit of drywall or fishing a wire up a wall. You might want to think about even hiring a local integrator, somebody, ask around, talk to them. That's not going to charge you $1 million to come in and run wires professionally. It just looks so much nicer when wires are up through walls and things are done that way. So Theo, did you do all the wiring yourself on yours, or did you seek professional help?
Great question. The answer is both. So whenever I can, I always try to have someone else run low voltage cabling. I don't want to deal with the hassle. So when we first did the walls in the theater, I did it together with an electrician. So all I did was I bought monoprice. I had some Kimber cable that was left over from an installation upstairs. So that was my cable of choice. That's what I had initially run. And then for some of the leftover, I just ordered 12 gauge monoprice 4 conductor CL2 rated. And then we just ran it up, drilled down with the studs open. And that's how we did the run. And I have a steel beam in the house, and that's where I've run the rest of the cables, so it's open for me. And then I also have a channel in the ceiling where I can run cabling, because with review stuff I can never have something that's permanent, if you will. So I needed some flexibility in that regard. So hopefully that
Yeah, that's
answers
kind of the
that
problem with
question.
not many people review architectural speakers.
Yeah.
I'm working on something right now so that I can review architectural speakers as a stereo pair, because you can't Swiss cheese your ceiling every time you get a new speaker in. So we can do that once, maybe twice if it fits the hole, or if it's a little bit larger. Can't go smaller, unless you patch the ceiling to do that. There's a bunch of really affordable architectural speakers out that sound really good now. I mean, Klipsch, Focal, RBH, Kef. I'm gonna forget somebody. They're like, you didn't mention our speakers. But certainly the world is your oyster to do that. See if anybody's got any questions on maybe somebody's trying to.
I think Mitchell 245 raises a great question about integrators.
Mhm. Sad part is most social integrators will not come in to just wire your room. Not enough margins for them or worth their time. Ask me how I know. Well, I mean, I get it. Of all people you're going to talk to, I get it. But there are a lot of smaller companies out there. There are 2 guys in a truck that are very good. Maybe they work for another company. If you really look around, sometimes you can find, if you call big high-end Uber integrators, yeah, that's probably what you're going to get, because they have overhead, they have vans, they have insurance, they have payroll. I mean, I know that well, but a lot of times there are people that'll do that for you and come in if you just look around. If you can do that, unless you're super handy and can patch drywall and whatnot, one a little trick that people, depending on how the trusses go in your ceiling, if the trusses are front to back, a lot of times you can fish up the wall, go into the truss. If you've got can lights, drop the can lights temporarily and use what's called a glow rod and fish those wires through, cut your hole where they end up, and do that. Now, if your trusses are the wrong way, then you got a little bit of an issue to deal with. Or there's carpet tucks. If you've got carpet in a room where you can tuck it down on the baseboard, you can pull out the baseboard. I've seen many times we've added crown molding to a room. Specifically, we go up the wall, we pop out near the top, and then we add some, 1 inch or 2 inch or whatever crown molding, and the wires run in that. Now, another neat thing you can do with that too is if you leave the crown, the top of it, about a 1/2 inch off, you can run low voltage LED lighting through there and have that really cool kind of theater glow in it. And lighting in theaters is something we're going to talk about too, because the mood, the color of the room, the lighting, all that has an effect, but that's a little more advanced. Really, I just wanted to talk about what you can do, for a certain amount of money. Some really good bookshelves, a matching center channel. Your front 3 are critical. Even if you have to go a little different on your base layer, your sides, your bed layer, your rears. And sometimes the companies don't make architectural speakers, so try to find something similar. If you use speakers with the AMT tweeter, try to get something with the AMT tweeter. If they have a horn or compression driver, try to find something similar. Even if it's not in the same brand, you're still going to be okay with equalization and whatnot. You really
John,
are.
maybe if we could go back to the wiring for a quick second. I want to mention something else that I did up in my living room area. Is if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, they sell a hollow baseboard front. So it's plastic and it's specifically made for cable runs. So what you do is you drill it into the baseboard, and then it has a plastic flap. It's rounded. It actually pops down, and it has 3 channels. So you can run cabling right into the channels. Then when you're done, you just seal the plastic back up. And then it has areas where the panels meet, where you can have a plastic cover, and it has an opening for speaker wire to come out. And that's how I have the LCRs done upstairs because it was going to be too much of a hassle, too challenging to run wire. So that's sort of bucket one. Bucket two is Kent Daigle, I think, said electrician or alarm installers. And that's what I've used. I've actually used an electrician to run my cabling most of the time. The final item is they now sell affordable flat speaker wire. So you can run that under a carpet. And then wireless. You know, you can get wireless transceivers. I know SVS sells a good one. There's others available as well. So a couple of different ways to really get the multi-channel installation done in an aesthetic and easy way.
Yeah, they've been making that flat wire for a long time. I think Monster Cable even made that in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we've used it before, and it works great. That's a great idea, hiring an electrician, an alarm guy, people that are used to retrofitting wires and pulling it through. Maybe not wiring your entire house, but, you know, wiring a room or doing an installation. I think if you look hard enough, you can find somebody who knows what they're doing, won't Swiss cheese your house, and is going to do it for a fair price. I mean, in the scheme of things, again, identify the room, good speakers that match, you know, brand, let's be brand agnostic, something that has, you know, there's so much information on specifications now. You can get a pretty good idea of the kind of output, the efficiency, what a speaker is going to produce, a really good quality AV receiver, but really studying up on it, applying all that, positioning of the speakers, mechanically treating the acoustics in the room, going through the process. And even if you have to hire somebody to come in remotely through a laptop and a microphone, invest in those kind of things. And you can get what we would call a reference sound. As long as everything's calibrated correctly, the acoustics are controlled, how much you spend on it is kind of irrelevant, because you can get some killer sound for not a ton of money. And speaking of that, so I asked Kenny to be on here because RBH kind of covers the gambit. I don't think they make cheap speakers, but RBH makes more affordable lines. And I asked Kenny, just for shits and giggles, let's put some systems together and some pricing to see what you have. So Kenny, I'm going to let you take that away, my brother.
All right. So I put all these together as on-wall package, but they're all available in freestanding, in-wall options. So really the sky's the limit as far as what your needs are. And we have a solution for every situation. But this is kind of I just put together an 11-channel single subwoofer solution for all the different like tiers, so to speak. And so the impression, you know, had some MTMs for LCRs, just TM for their, you know, the surrounds and rears, and then also angled speakers for the ceiling. And this package right here with our one of our most popular small subwoofers, this subwoofer is $1,600 by itself, but all together, this package is about $5,900. So for not a whole lot of money, you can have a killer system for small to medium sized rooms.
Yeah, I would say so. And that's a full tilt system. And just kind of use that as an example of how you could put a system together. LCRs, you know, box speakers with tweeter mid-range, something, it's going to give you really good uniform sound. As you go higher, you're probably going to get more output as you get more, you know, driver area, beefier crossovers and whatnot. But how loud do you want to go? How loud is too loud? Get yourself a good starter system, get it all set up, get it properly done. You may just be happily in nirvana and live with that thing for many, many years to come. And, or you might want to slowly upgrade once the bug catches you, which it does everybody, I'm telling you, to do that. So, you know, so average guy hi-fi brought up the Monolith THX in-walls. Great choice. Really a budget, if you're looking at the price of it, a budget kind of caliber speaker that cranks and sounds great. Another choice, RSL makes phenomenal architectural speakers. I've actually got to hear those. They sound way better than they have any right to be on that. So really, really good. What else did you put together, Kenny?
Yeah, so kind of stepping it up to a signature reference system, going really big with some $2,300 left and rights, and then the MTMs for the surrounds, and then the angled speakers for the ceiling, and dual 12 reference sub. I decided to go a little bit overboard on this one, but I mean, there's really a big range from the impression line to the signature reference line. So this system clocks in at about 21,000 for the speakers.
So that's kind of more or less the Shane Lee special there, isn't it? Kind of what he's got going on, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
That's a killer system, but you're getting into a much higher price range. But that's the kind of system you could put into a dedicated room to really give you that output that you're looking for, and that uniform timbre matching all the way around. Don't have to have it, but if you can do it, it's always the best to do that. I wonder if anybody out there, you got any questions? Are you working on a system or a room that you've got questions on, looking for an upgrade to do? I'd like to get a little more participation going on here instead of making fun of what I say. Nerd alert.
John, while you're waiting for some comments, is Kenny, I don't know that we necessarily talked about on wall. So we talked about in wall and we talked about freestanding. It seems to me that the real opportunity is on wall, because then you don't have to worry about, listen, you have plaster walls, you don't know what's inside the wall. And then when you start to do with an on-wall solution, you really don't have to worry about the studs either, per se. And you can then place the speakers anywhere you want in the room on wall. And I think there's a lot of advantages to that. And my experience, again, with the build quality of RBH is you have, are they MDF or HDF? Those models,
HDF.
They're HDF. So you have a totally inert cabinet. You have amazing drivers in those things. And obviously they're a little bit more money, but I love your AMT tweeters and the performance that comes out of those. So for me, that is probably one of the biggest bang for the buck. And the other thing that I'll say is your angled Atmos speakers. They are super flexible in placement. I had the SVS versions many, many years ago in for review, and it was the flexibility to use them either on a back wall or ceiling mount them that became so advantageous once I started using them. I love the flexibility for the installation options and the different challenges.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So speaker options, man, there's just so many, going to the on wall. I just reviewed the Focal 302 on walls, and they also make a 301, which is a little bit smaller. I was actually floored. Now, I've done some professional installations with these, and you get to hear them in a home and they sound good, but until you get them into your room, in your space, and I tested them as a 2-channel standalone. I tested them as the mains. I moved the Focal Canta 2s and put those in place of them. Shockingly good for a fraction of the money for that. And again, the space saving, you could do an entire system. All your, your bed layer could all be those going all the way around. You'd be shocked how good these on-wall speakers sound. And again, they're saving space. If you got a big projection screen or a large scale TV, you could flank left and right and underneath it, add some good subwoofers to it. And you're absolutely right, Theo. I mean, so many options to do that. Man, it's kind of be a little overwhelming for people kind of just getting in this hobby. Imagine dipping your toes in the water of this, then everybody's got an opinion. Everybody loves what they own. And if you don't own what they own, then you're wrong, which is not true. People are like, oh, we never see a bad review of speakers. I'm like, give me some bad speakers and I'll give it a bad review. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there now. It's the truth. I mean, the technology's come a long ways. What you get for your money now is so much more. There used to be a pretty substantial gap in the entry level and the mid-fi. It would jump up real high. Man, there's some great speakers under $2,000 out there now.
Could you parentheses on what you just said, though? Like, I don't see a review of bad speakers. From the Audioholics perspective, Gene does an initial screening on the build quality and the manufacturer. And then we get a choice as to whether or not we even want to do the review or if it's of interest. So very rarely will you see a bad review because there's been some pre-screening that's been done of the manufacturer. So I find it funny, but I didn't even think of that until you just said it. But the reader doesn't know what goes on behind the scenes, and there's a lot of iterations that we do before we even take on a review. I don't want to waste my time listening to junk, right? And I don't think you do either.
Yeah, no comment on that. So we get bombarded with people wanting us to review stuff, and all my influencer buddies and people that are doing reviews understand, obscure brands, a lot of stuff from Asia coming out. You have to kind of pick and choose what you're, because it takes a long time to review a speaker. It's not like you just set it up and go, oh, it sounds great, let me write a review. I mean, I know your process, Theo. I know my process. I literally spend weeks and weeks moving it in one room, moving it into another room to see how these speakers react, because speakers do sound different in different environments.
Yep.
They absolutely do. The environment that your speaker lives in is critical. So I'm going to start trying to find some more affordable products to review. I think it's kind of cool. Hook them up to a little integrated amp and see what they sound like in stereo, then move them into a more of a high end, a very fancy system to say the least, and get that going and see how do they keep up as mains. If they can keep up with my Focal Cantas, that's a pretty good endorsement. And I've had a lot of speakers come through here that more than held their own, which much smaller. Now I got to cross them over. I run the Cantas full range, which is another thing too. Another little trick. If you have a lesser expensive speaker, cross it over. Let the subs do the work. That's super, super critical as you go into it. So a lot of factors that go into it. Do some homework. You can always reach out to us. I mean, we're busy. We all have, families and jobs, and this is just something that's a passion project for us. We don't really make any money doing it. The cool part is we get to be in the industry as lovers of the technology and see something new that's cool that comes out and get to hear it covering an audio show, or get a sample sent to you that you can play, really get to know it. How many times have you been surprised, Theo, when you get a product you weren't crazy about, but when you actually got it, you were like, wow, this is super cool. Come on.
The RSL speakers.
Dude.
I mean, I will tell you, that's happened to me so many times. So I would say RSL, first of all, absolutely, both their CG4s and the CG5s and the Subwoofer first come to mind. They were so good, I still remember the review. So that comes to mind. The second one is actually the RBHs. The RBH SVTRs, I did not know what to expect. And I still remember when Shane had come to the house and they did the installation at that time, and we turned the system on. Wow. Never before or since have I heard any speaker with that bass output. It's mind numbing.
Never before have you ever had a speaker that big in your sound room either.
That's true too. They are quite imposing, but if you have the footprint, that's the speaker. That's an end game speaker.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's just out of most people's budget range.
Yeah.
We get kind of caught up in the super high end and reviewing. I'm reviewing these Arendal 1528s I've been living with for a while now, that I'm in love with, just killer speakers, but they're $9,500 a pair, which, I'm like, it's a great value. Well, in the scheme of $20,000 speakers that it keeps up with, but for most people, that might as well be Mars. Like they're just never going to be able to get the extra dough. And, maybe over a period of years and buying and selling, upgrading and so on and so forth, you'll be able to get up to that level. The point is, you don't have to be at that level. Like you mentioned RSL, stupid good for the money. Stupid
crazy. Crazy good, right?
Can't believe how good they are for the money. Going when I first years ago, I knew who RBH was. They're not exactly known for their marketing. Sorry, Kenny. But I know I saw them in the home theater magazines in years past. I'm like, oh, those look cool. But they were never really on my radar until I went, started hanging out with Gene and started to hear them. I'm like, my God, these things sound amazing. Wow. And not just the big boys, but, he had multiple different RBH speakers. And I got my first pair and I just haven't looked back. I mean, it's a tremendous value, but
Yeah.
what is value, right? Just like the Arndals are a tremendous value. What is your point of value? What does that mean to you? Somebody on here was, I think it was Van Gool, was talking about, forgive me if I got this wrong, but the ELACs. I heard the ELACs at the Audio Advice show last year. Little entry level bookshelves under $500 a pair. Now they had 300 watts. They had some big power going on it. I walked in that room, and of course it was again, going to sizing the speakers to the room. In a hotel room, man, those things sounded absolutely killer. Like anybody'd be happy with that. Now maybe when you measure them and check them and all that, they might not meet up. But does that really matter if it's in your room and you're enjoying it? They played loud, they cranked, they look nice. They got some veneer on them and stuff. You're going to give a lot of what you're paying for in a more expensive speaker, and even sometimes in a more expensive amplifier. The cases and the faceplates that they use for those is nuts, and what it costs. But as far as the guts, the drivers, the crossover, you'd be pleasantly surprised with what you get. So
I agree.
The witching hour is upon us. Kenny, any final thoughts on this subject about trying to design something on any budget?
Speaking of any budget, we got the biggest one. Got to show it off.
Oh boy.
So this is kind of a no compromise solution. You want the biggest, baddest, most output. You can do it. And also just wanted to, kind of plug that we are doing some 8-inch angled speakers coming soon. So just needed to plug that in there. They're going to be a perfect timbre match for our flagship systems.
Yeah, we all sitting down. What's this cost?
This is around $50,000.
Yeah, it's pretty killer. I'll give you that after living with them. But again, how much difference is there for your entry level system? They're both going to blow you away. You're going to be super happy. Really depends on the size of the room and what your goals are. Really taking a step back, maybe writing it down, establish what your goals are, establish your budget, establish what you're going to do, and balance that budget out with treatments on the room, acoustics, cabinetry. You can't just think about speakers and amplifiers. I know we all, because that's the sexy stuff, very, very sexy. But, you want to focus on holistically how that system's going to go. My man, Theo, you have any final thoughts on this subject?
Just follow your dream. If you love music, you love movies, you love audio, and this is a goal that you have about building a theater, look at it as a long game. That's what I did. I first envisioned this space that I'm sitting in 10 years ago. So it's been a 10-year journey for me. I did it over time. I did it in pieces, and I did what I could basically afford over that time. And I've been dreaming about it for 20 years. So if I was to give you all any advice, is buy the best gear that you can for what your dream is. Start with 2-channel. You don't have to do multi-channel all at once. And start with the gear whose technology doesn't change the fastest to get the biggest bang for the buck. And though that gear that does is your processors and your AVRs. So I would not prioritize that. I'd prioritize getting better speakers, subs that are going to last a longer time and a lifetime, amplifiers, and then I would look at the source material and the AVRs, and even be willing to compromise by buying some units that are a few years old to get something better. So that's the way I've approached it, and it's worked really well for me over time.
100%. Another thing I'll touch on too, because I'm pretty active on Facebook groups and different social media platforms, in the home theater groups, because I love home theater. Listen, nobody knows everything. I don't know everything. If I could put a list out of what Matthew Pose has taught me, or James Larson's, Kenny, nobody knows everything. So I peruse these forums, and I see a lot of shaming, and I know some groups won't put up with it, but in forums, don't shame people. People have legitimate questions. They're trying to build something. Yeah. Be a good ambassador for the hobby. Try to give people advice. Tell them, hey, this is what I did. This is what I bought. Don't go, oh, you got clips. Huh. Or, now we have some fun groups like Roast My Rig, where we in good spirit roast the shit out of people on their systems, especially the Klipsch guys, because everybody's got Klipsch. But be a good ambassador for the hobby. Reach out if there's somebody out there that's a reviewer. Most everybody answers emails. You can usually or join a Patreon for one of your favorite influencers. Like, Audioholics got a great Patreon that gives you access to things that you won't normally see. They get a few dollars for it, but that's how they pay the bills and feed their family, which is really, really cool. So be good ambassadors for it. Think about what you're doing. I'm always available. I'm on Facebook, social media. If I don't get to you right away, I'll try to answer it. I'll try to use my 30 plus years experience. Again, I don't know everything, but I do know a lot, and I'm good at little tips and tricks, not ticks and tricks. Silly rabbit tricks are for kids. Because I'm poor too. So I've known a lot of little tricks for acoustic treatments and whatnot. Now, one day soon, I will have a dedicated room. I'll have a dedicated 2-channel room first, because that's what I really want, to dedicate a 2-channel room, because I love stereo, and that's always important to me. And whenever I design a system for myself or a good friend, I always try to make it a stereo system first for 2-channel. Then it's easier to build on that. But if you're building a full tilt theater, really acoustically transparent screen, speakers and a baffle wall, that's the way to go. Something high output that's going to play through any loss in signal that you're going through that screen. Be good ambassadors. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be a dick. Sorry, but that's a scoop. Listen, if you enjoy this program and other things that Audioholics has, please hit the subscribe button, or check us out on patreon.com/Audioholics. Thank you very much for your time. New at this, running it, getting the software down. If I'm a little shaky now, I'll be smooth as silk soon. Just give the boy a minute. So really appreciate you guys. Theo, thank you. Kenny,
Thanks.
as always, thank you. And remember,
Kenny, good
guys,
to see you.
Yeah, always.
Back at you guys.
Yeah, Kenny, calm down. Just calm down, Kenny. Just relax. Can't take that guy anywhere. Hey, guys, next time, keep listening.